It didn't come with fanfare. No grand announcement, no waving flags or marching bands, just a single headline flashing across newsrooms at 2:03 a.m. U.S. conducts precision strikes inside Iran. Somewhere in southern Iraq, a U.S. Army drone pilot stared at a glowing screen as a missile left his MQ-9 Reaper and streaked across the night sky. 30 seconds later, the screen lit up. Target destroyed. It had begun. The strike hit a military radar installation just outside Shiraz, reportedly connected to Iran's air defense network and suspected ballistic operations. Initial reports suggested limited casualties, but the aftermath wasn't limited at all, because in that instant, a red line unspoken, sacred, and decades old was crossed. For over 40 years, the U.S. and Iran had waged a silent war in shadows. They fought through proxies, not through declarations. Through covert cyber attacks, not through airstrikes on sovereign soil. Through sanctions, not shockwaves. That restraint, though imperfect, had held the world together, until now. This was not just a military operation. It was a rupture in the global order. The United States had always avoided direct strikes inside Iranian territory. It was an invisible pact broken only in covert assassinations or shadow wars. But this was different. This was a public strike, acknowledged, televised, tracked in real time by Twitter feeds, satellite imagery, and breaking news alerts. The world saw it happen. And more importantly, Tehran saw it happen. Inside Iran's government bunker, beneath the capital, senior IRGC commanders reportedly huddled in emergency session. State TV aired a single phrase over and over: "This will not go unanswered." For millions of Iranians already strained by sanctions, inflation, and social unrest, this was the moment fear turned to fury. Tehran erupted not in panic but in resolve. Crowds poured into the streets chanting for retaliation, not diplomacy. And while the Pentagon insisted this was a limited defensive strike, few around the world believed the word limited meant anything anymore. Because the red line that had been broken wasn't just territorial, it was philosophical. It meant the rules of engagement had changed, and with them, the future. Why did the U.S. cross it? The official statement from the Department of Defense cited imminent threats to U.S. personnel in the region. Unofficially, sources reported that Iran-backed militias had launched a missile barrage into Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq just 48 hours prior, killing 2 American service members. The White House, under pressure to look decisive, gave the green light. But others claim it was a setup, that the attack on the U.S. base was anticipated, that the strike on Iran had been planned weeks earlier, and this was merely the excuse. If that's true, it's not just a military response. It's a strategic pivot. American reaction, divided and anxious. In Washington, political fault lines deepened immediately. Some hailed the strike as long overdue, a show of strength. Others warned it was opening the gates of hell. The American public, already weary from past wars in the Middle East, seemed split. Google searches for "Where is Iran?" spiked. So did searches for World War III, military draft, and gas prices near me. In just hours, global oil futures surged to $140 a barrel. The stock market trembled. Social media became a battleground of rumors, panic, nationalism, and dread. One tweet went viral. "It's not just about Iran, it's about what comes after Iran." And that's the part no one could answer. Tehran's silence was louder than any bomb. For 24 hours after the strike, Iran didn't respond militarily. No missiles, no counterstrike. Just silence. But analysts knew better. Iran doesn't shout, it calculates. It waits. And when it hits back, it hits asymmetrically, using drones, malicious hackers, and psychological war. This was the calm before something darker. What happens now? We've entered the part of the story no one wrote a script for. The United States has broken its own doctrine of containment. Iran has suffered a direct strike on its soil. Israel is mobilizing. Hezbollah is whispering, and the world is holding its breath again. Because in war, the first move matters, but it's the second move that decides everything. What will Iran do next, and what if? They've been waiting for this moment all along. For 36 hours after the U.S. launched its first strike inside Iran, the world held its breath, and Iran said nothing. No missiles, no drone swarms, no televised threats, only silence. But in Tehran, silence is never absence. It's choreography. It's mathematics. It's a language the West has never quite learned to translate. When America attacks, some nations scream, others panic. Iran calculates. A history of patient vengeance, Iran has never responded to threats the way Western playbooks expect. Its military philosophy, shaped by millennia of empire occupation and resistance, favors asymmetric warfare, delayed retribution, and above all, psychological pressure. In 2020, when the U.S. assassinated General Qasem Soleimani, Iran didn't immediately strike back with full force. Instead, they chose precision missile fire on U.S. bases in Iraq, no fatalities, just a warning, a calculated wound, a show of restraint wrapped in capability. Now with a direct American strike inside its territory, Iran is once again faced with a pivotal decision. Do they retaliate immediately and risk global condemnation? Or do they absorb the blow, wait and strike when the world least expects? If history is a guide, Iran won't just strike back. They'll make it hurt and make it hard to trace. The three axes of Iranian response intelligence analysts across the globe have laid out three likely dimensions to Iran's countermove, and none of them look like conventional war. 1. The direct strike. But strategic Iran has the capability to launch medium-range ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq, Syria, Bahrain, Qatar, even Israel. But they won't do it recklessly. They'll choose a target that minimizes civilian casualties, maximizes political shock value, reinforces deterrence without triggering full-scale war. Satellite imagery shows Iran mobilizing missile systems in the Khuzestan province. There are whispers of newly activated air defense units near Natanz. Some reports claim the Shahid Hemmat Industrial Group is preparing a prototype drone swarm capable of low-altitude strikes against radar-protected bases. But these are just signals. The real threat may not come from Iran directly. 2. The proxy. Inferno, Iran's true power doesn't lie in missiles. It lies in its network of proxy forces across the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen, Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Shia militias in Syria and Afghanistan. These groups are ideologically aligned, well-armed, and deeply embedded in local populations. They don't wear uniforms. They don't follow Geneva Conventions. They follow a doctrine of martyrdom, patience, and chaos. And they're already moving. Reports confirm rocket fire from southern Lebanon into northern Israel, drone activity over U.S. bases in Erbil, Iraq, Houthi naval drones deployed in the Red Sea. None of these groups have claimed responsibility yet, but no one needs them to. The message is clear. You hit Iran, Iran will bleed you through 1,000 cuts. 3. The shadow front cyber and psychological war. While the world watches the skies, Iran's most insidious weapon may already be online. Iran's cyber units, particularly those within the IRGC's Cyber Defense Command, have proven capabilities to infiltrate U.S. infrastructure, shut down power grids, manipulate financial systems, spread disinformation on American social platforms. In 2021, Iranian hackers breached a U.S. water facility control system. In 2023, they were linked to an attack on Israeli hospitals. Now experts believe they've escalated. As of this morning, hundreds of U.S. banks have reported abnormal login spikes. False reports of American casualties in Iraq trended on Telegram and TikTok. An AI-generated video purporting to show a second U.S. strike on Iranian civilians went viral before being debunked. This is not just warfare, it's perception warfare. The battleground is no longer Iraq or Tehran. It's your phone, your newsfeed, your nervous system. Why is Iran holding back? Because they know what America doesn't. Timing is power. Iran doesn't need to win a war in 48 hours. They need to prolong it, exhaust their enemies, and undermine political unity in Washington. Every minute they don't respond, U.S. intelligence agencies go more anxious. Every hour they delay, oil prices rise. Every day they wait, the American public starts to ask, why did we attack them? In the first place, Iran wants public fatigue to set in before they act. Because when the U.S. loses its moral clarity, Iran gains global leverage. The strategic trap. Some analysts believe Iran is luring the U.S. into overreacting, that if America strikes again before Iran retaliates, it plays into Tehran's narrative. We are the victims. We are being hunted. That image is powerful, especially in the global south among BRICS nations and in international courts. It can shift diplomatic alliances, fuel street protests, and cripple American soft power. What comes next? The truth is, Iran's next move may not come from Tehran. It may come from a burning oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, a blackout in Los Angeles, a suicide drone crashing into an American consulate, a cyber leak of classified U.S. military data. It may not come tomorrow or next week, but it will come. And when it does, it won't feel like revenge. It will feel like the world tipping off its axis. Because Iran doesn't want to end this quickly. They want to drag it out until the world is forced to ask, was the first strike even worth it? In war, geography matters. But in Iran's war doctrine, geography is fluid. It doesn't have to plant flags or march tanks into foreign capitals. Instead, Iran has spent the last 4 decades building something far more enduring and far more dangerous, a network of armed ideological satellites. They go by names like Hezbollah, the Houthis Kataib Hezbollah, and Liwa Fatemiyun. To the casual observer, they're just regional militias. But to Iran, they're weapons. And right now, those weapons are moving. Iran's invisible army. The brilliance of Iran's proxy network lies in its ambiguity. These groups wear no uniforms. They do not operate under the Iranian flag. They speak different dialects, fight under different banners, and invoke different causes. But their funding, training, and strategic direction all trace back to one place, Tehran. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, particularly its elite Quds force, has spent decades nurturing these alliances. Each proxy serves a role not just in their own countries, but in Iran's larger strategic map. Hezbollah controls southern Lebanon and poses a constant existential threat to Israel. Kataib Hezbollah operates inside Iraq, targeting American troops and undermining Baghdad's independence. The Houthis in Yemen choke one of the most critical oil choke points in the world, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Liwa Fatemiyun in Syria, composed of Afghan Shia fighters, stabilizes Iran's land corridor to the Mediterranean. This isn't just a network, it's a spider web, and America just triggered the vibration at its center. The spark that lit every front. After the U.S. strike on Iranian soil, none of these groups waited for orders. Within 48 hours, Hezbollah launched a barrage of rockets into Israel's Galilee region, prompting Israeli airstrikes and a mobilization of 30,000 IDF reservists. Kataib Hezbollah claimed responsibility for a drone attack on the U.S. consulate compound in Erbil, Iraq, causing injuries but no fatalities. The Houthis launched long-range missiles at Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure in Abqaiq and attempted to disable a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Red Sea. Liwa Fatemiyun engaged in firefights with U.S.-backed Kurdish forces near Deir ez-Zor. None of these skirmishes were large enough to qualify as war, but collectively they created chaos, and chaos was always the plan. Death by 1,000 cuts. Iran has no interest in a symmetrical war with the United States. It knows it can't win that battle. Instead, it's employing the strategy of bleeding the empire slowly. A base bombed here, a naval vessel harassed there, a convoy destroyed on a remote Syrian highway. Each attack forces a decision from Washington. Respond and risk escalation. Don't respond and look weak. There is no winning move, only exhaustion. Iran's proxies understand this. Their goal is not to defeat America militarily, but to drain it politically, economically, and emotionally. They aim to undermine public support for further military action, stretch American resources thin across multiple fronts, sow divisions among U.S. allies in NATO and the Gulf Cooperation Council. They don't need to conquer land. They just need to outlast the will to fight. The global choke points, one of Iran's greatest assets, is its geographical positioning around critical energy corridors and its ability to weaponize them through proxies. The Strait of Hormuz, controlled by Iran, directly sees nearly 20% of the world's oil trade. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait, flanked by Houthi territory in Yemen, is a gateway to the Suez Canal. Iraqi pipelines and Kuwaiti ports are vulnerable to attacks from Shia militias. Even a temporary disruption in any of these areas causes global oil prices to spike. When Hezbollah threatens Israel's northern border, or when a drone buzzes near the UAE, markets respond. And Iran doesn't even have to act. It just has to hint. Why the U.S. can't retaliate effectively? Herein lies the trap. If the U.S. retaliates against Iran directly, it risks opening a full-scale regional war. If it retaliates against proxies, it risks striking civilian areas or foreign governments, and falling into the narrative Iran has built that America is the aggressor. Kataib Hezbollah is technically part of the Iraqi security forces. Hezbollah sits in Lebanon's parliament. The Houthis, like them or not, are a de facto government in northern Yemen. You can't bomb your way out of a proxy war. The battlefield is everywhere, and the rules don't apply. The psychological toll. As American forces brace for incoming fire on half a dozen fronts, their morale suffers. Military families back home begin questioning deployments. Congress debates war funding. The media becomes a battleground of blame. This is what Iran's proxies were built for, to shatter America's sense of control. There's no front line, no one to negotiate with, just fire and waiting. And the worst may still be ahead. The real fear is not that Iran's proxies will attack. It's that they'll do it in ways no one expects. A car bomb in Oman, a cyber attack on a water treatment plant in Texas, a missile strike on a G20 summit. The longer this goes, the more creative the attacks become. Conclusion: a war without borders, without names. As the world focuses on Tehran and Washington, the real war is being fought in alleyways of Mosul skies over Haifa, in cyberspace of Atlanta. Iran's proxies don't wear uniforms. They don't need declarations. They just need time. And in proxy warfare, time always favors the one with more patience, more pain tolerance, and more shadows to hide in. The world doesn't need a nuclear explosion to unravel. It only takes one decision from Washington. When the United States launched its first direct strike on Iranian military infrastructure, the world paused for a second, but then it convulsed. What was supposed to be a show of force became a global catalyst. Missiles shattered more than concrete. They broke the illusion that peace was holding. In just 48 hours, every system that upholds the global order, economic, political, informational, and psychological, began to crack. And no one, not even America, was prepared for how fast the fallout would spread. The first shockwave: energy markets collapse. The first aftershock wasn't military, it was economic. Iran responded with a threat that didn't involve bombs, but carried even more destructive potential, closing the Strait of Hormuz. It's a 21-mile-wide maritime choke point through which over 20% of the world's oil supply travels daily. Oil tankers from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, all of it flows through Hormuz. Block that channel and the bloodstream of the global economy clots. And that's exactly what happened. Brent crude prices spiked past $130 a barrel, the highest since the early 2000s. In Los Angeles, gas prices hit $5.72 a gallon, and that was just the beginning. Airlines canceled flights, shipping companies rerouted vessels thousands of miles, and the stock market trembled. The Dow Jones dropped 950 points in one trading session. Gold surged over $2,200 an ounce. Bitcoin spiked 11%, fueled by fear, not faith. On Wall Street, screens turned red. In Houston, oil executives panicked. In Washington, the Treasury held emergency briefings behind closed doors. And for the average American, the question became deeply personal. How long can I afford to fill my tank, feed my family, trust that tomorrow will look like yesterday? The second shockwave: alliances begin to splinter. When President Truman launched the first airstrike in Korea in 1950, he did it with the full backing of allies. When George W. Bush invaded Iraq, he worked months to build a coalition. But this strike: no warnings, no coalition, no vote. And the world noticed. France, Germany, and Canada condemned the move as unilateral and destabilizing. China accused the U.S. of igniting war in an already burning region. Russia called the strike a reckless provocation and began deploying electronic warfare units in Syria. Israel, ever the U.S. ally, praised the operation, but behind closed doors, even Israeli officials feared what might come next. Inside, NATO panic spread. Article 5 was never triggered. No one knew whether this counted as a preemptive strike or an act of war. The alliance, built on unity in the face of threat, fractured under the pressure of ambiguity. Even non-aligned nations began to take sides. India, South Africa, and Brazil released carefully worded statements calling for de-escalation, but the undertone was clear: America moved without consensus, and now we all face the consequences. The third shockwave: America looks inward. While diplomats scrambled and traders panicked, ordinary Americans began to ask a dangerous question: did we just start World War III? At first, it was just social media chatter, but soon the shock turned into protest. In New York, Chicago, Seattle, people flooded the streets. No more endless war signs reappeared like ghosts from 2003. Cable news became a battleground of its own. Pundits on one side praised the decisiveness of the president's actions. Others called it a violation of the War Powers Resolution, accusing the White House of bypassing Congress in a matter of war. Approval ratings plummeted by double digits. Military recruiters reported a surge in phone calls not from volunteers, but from angry parents demanding answers. Young Americans raised on stories of Iraq and Afghanistan weren't buying the official line. On TikTok and YouTube, videos dissecting the escalation went viral. A new hashtag trended worldwide, Shakhtar, not in our name. The fourth shockwave. The war on truth. Even before the first drone landed, another kind of war was already underway. It started with a deepfake video, grainy, brutal, terrifying. It appeared to show American soldiers being captured by Iranian forces. Within hours, the video had been viewed 72 million times. Was it real? No one knew. But millions believed it. Soon more followed a fake news anchor reporting that U.S. cities were under cyber attack. Bots pushing stories that the White House had authorized a second wave of strikes, which wasn't true. AI-generated speeches from fake government sources causing panic in multiple languages. Platforms like X, Instagram, and YouTube struggled to contain the chaos. The sheer volume of false information overwhelmed even the most advanced moderation systems. This wasn't just propaganda, it was a weaponized information assault, designed to confuse, to mislead, and to destroy trust. In the fog of war, the truth isn't the first casualty, it's the entire battlefield. The fifth shockwave, global psychology, breaks down. By the end of the week, the war hadn't reached most cities physically, but psychologically, it had already crossed every border. In Tokyo, the government raised its missile defense alert to the highest level since North Korea's tests. In London, Parliament held 3 emergency sessions in 48 hours. In Mumbai, people lined up outside supermarkets with carts full of bottled water and rice. In Lagos, fuel prices doubled in 36 hours, and rumors of martial law filled the air. Even in rural America, the war felt close. Schools canceled field trips. Church sermons turned into discussions of survival. The sense of normal evaporated. This wasn't just a geopolitical crisis. It was a human crisis, one built not on bombs but fear. Closing thoughts, the system is unraveling. In just 72 hours, a single American decision triggered a cascade of global disruptions. No nuclear weapon had been fired. No invasion launched. But the world was already destabilized. Economies were reeling. Alliances were cracking. Citizens were questioning their governments. And in living rooms around the world, people were asking, if this is only the beginning, what's next? After the strike, after the retaliation, after the chaos, what's left is the choice. But what if every choice leads to war? When the first U.S. missile struck Iranian soil, the world watched. When Iran responded with force, the world braced. And when chaos erupted across financial markets, political alliances, and the internet, the world panicked. Now we reach the most dangerous stage, the moment after the world has cracked, when every actor must decide what comes next. This is the part where history writes itself, or unravels entirely. There are only 3 ways this story can go, and each one carries its own catastrophic logic. Path 1, full retaliation and regional collapse. The first path is the simplest and the deadliest, full retaliation. For Iran's military leadership, the calculus is brutal. If they don't strike back hard, they appear weak internally and globally. The Revolutionary Guard doesn't just represent military strength, it's the spine of the regime's survival. Pride, fear, and survival are now indistinguishable. In the span of 48 hours, Iran could launch a full theater-wide operation. Ballistic missile barrages target U.S. bases in Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar. Not symbolic, destructive. Hezbollah opens a northern front, unleashing thousands of guided rockets from Lebanon into Israeli territory, forcing Israel to activate the Iron Dome and go on wartime footing. Iranian naval mines and drones begin targeting commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf. One American-owned tanker is sunk. U.S. aircraft carriers respond with strategic bombing raids deep inside Iranian command and control facilities, including military airports and radar networks. The entire Middle East becomes a combat zone. American troops are put on high alert from Bahrain to Baghdad. Israel begins calling up reservists. Jordan and Egypt seal their borders. Global effects are immediate. Oil hits $200 per barrel. Global shipping reroutes around Africa, adding weeks to delivery times. NATO holds an emergency meeting, but members are fractured. Some support action, others panic. And most dangerously, American military casualties begin piling up. News reports show black body bags returning home. Protesters outside the White House demand answers. Inside the Situation Room, no one knows how to stop what they've started. Path 2, a temporary pause under global pressure. But war doesn't always unfold in a straight line. Sometimes even the most violent spirals stall briefly under the crushing weight of global fear. This is the second path, a pause. Not peace, not diplomacy, just a delay. In this version of the future, Russia and China intervene not to defend Iran, but to contain American aggression. Their interest isn't ideological, it's structural. If the U.S. is allowed to reshape the region unilaterally, every balance of power is up for grabs. Here's how the pause could unfold. The UN Security Council holds an emergency session, but resolution efforts stall. India and Turkey, two regional giants, offer themselves as honest brokers, opening a diplomatic corridor between Tehran and Washington. Iran agrees to a 72-hour stand-down window, brokered in secret by Russian intermediaries. The U.S. halts airstrikes but deploys two more carrier strike groups into the Persian Gulf, a silent threat. Behind the scenes, Mossad grows uneasy. Israel fears that the delay allows Iran to regroup, rearm, and replot its strategy. On the surface, things look calm, but it's not calm, it's pressure. The entire world becomes a high-stakes chessboard where every piece is explosive. Publicly, leaders say the right words: de-escalation, restraint, dialogue. But privately, war planners continue running simulations, none of which end well. This is the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0, a breathless standoff between nuclear-armed powers, fueled not just by ideology, but fear of appearing weak. And as every veteran diplomat knows, pauses aren't peace. They're breathing rooms before the next punch. Path 3, tactical nuclear deterrence. The third path is the most terrifying, and yet it is no longer unthinkable. In fact, it's closer than anyone wants to admit. It starts with something unexpected, something bloody. Maybe a coordinated Iranian drone and rocket strike takes out a U.S. base in Iraq. Dozens dead. Communications jammed. Footage leaks online. In the Pentagon, the mood shifts. The conversation turns from air superiority to strategic deterrence. The U.S. raises its DEFCON level. B-2 bombers are scrambled, submarines reposition, and the word no one wanted to say enters the room: tactical nukes. The logic isn't madness, it's Cold War realism. If Iran escalates beyond a certain threshold, the only credible deterrent may be the unthinkable. Israel begins fueling its Jericho III missiles, capable of delivering nuclear payloads anywhere in the region. Iran disperses its nuclear scientists and enrichment infrastructure to underground black sites, a signal that its breakout window has begun. China and Russia issue warnings, but they're ignored. American media begins speculating: what happens if a small-yield nuclear bomb is used over a remote military site in Iran as a warning? The public freaks out. People empty grocery stores. Gas lines return. Duck and cover drills go viral on TikTok. Generational trauma reawakens. No bomb has dropped yet, but the psychology of the bomb has already detonated. And then one final variable appears, one that no general, no president, no human can fully control: artificial intelligence. Military AI systems built for speed and pattern recognition begin identifying Iranian radar signals as hostile lock-ons. Autonomous defense systems arm themselves. The fog of war now has a machine mind, and someone in a command bunker must ask, do we trust the human brain or the machine's logic when we're seconds from launch? Subtext: escalation isn't just political, it's human. Across all three scenarios, one truth holds: escalation isn't just a matter of strategy, it's a matter of psychology. Presidents don't want to look weak. Generals don't want to back down. Populations want revenge. Markets want stability. And machines want clarity. But clarity is gone. Every path forward feels like a trap. One wrong move, one misread signal, one rogue actor, and the war becomes irreversible. This is no longer a question of if, it's a question of who blinks first and what happens if no one does. Ending thought: choice or collision. So here we are, after the missile strikes, after the retaliation, after the market crashes and the lies go viral. What's left are three doors: retaliation and collapse, pause and paralysis, nuclear brinkmanship. Each one leads to something worse than the last, And maybe the scariest part isn't that we're running out of options, it's that we're already walking down all three at the same time. Wars don't always start with declarations. Sometimes they begin with silence and end in screams. For days, the world held its breath. Missiles were launched, markets crashed, propaganda flowed faster than truth. But somehow the planet didn't detonate yet. 1,000 red lines were crossed, but no one pulled the final trigger. That moment ends now. This is the part where the system, military, diplomatic, informational, overheats. The safety locks fail. Every actor from presidents to drones begins moving faster than reason can keep up. And that's what we call the tipping point. Chapter 1. Systems overload, control begins to slip. There are too many players on the board now. The US, Iran, Israel, Hezbollah, Russia, China. Rogue actors, tribal militias, cybercriminals. AI-assisted command systems running 24/7 processing threats before a human can even read the alert. No one sees the whole picture anymore. Intelligence reports contradict each other. Radars give conflicting signals. A drone strike gets authorized, but halfway through the GPS link fails. Inside the White House Situation Room, a 4-star general leans forward and says something no president wants to hear. We're not sure if it was them, but we don't have time to wait. 2. The miscalculation, the bullet that starts the avalanche. It was supposed to be a limited strike. Maybe a U.S. drone hits what it believes is a Hezbollah rocket warehouse, but the building turns out to be a school children inside. Footage leaks before confirmation can even begin. Or an Iranian-backed militia targets a Turkish convoy. By mistake, NATO is suddenly in the mix. Or worse, a U.S. Navy ship picks up a radar lock from an unidentified drone and fires first. The drone was unarmed. That's all it takes. Just one mistake. One that nobody meant. One that everyone pays for. And this is the difference between war and escalation. Escalation happens by logic. War happens by accident. 3. The logic of fear. Why leaders escalate. Even when they know it's insane. Presidents don't want world wars. Generals don't crave annihilation. But in the fog of global conflict, fear becomes stronger than strategy. The U.S. president sees approval ratings plummeting. Cable news demands action. The word deterrence floods every screen. Iran's supreme leader hears whispers inside his own government. Some say he hesitated. In this region, that can mean death. Israel's war cabinet decides it can't afford to wait for Hezbollah's next move and launches airstrikes into Syria and southern Lebanon. Russia deploys naval assets to the Mediterranean. Not because it's ready for war, but because war creates openings. No one wants to lose, so everyone moves first. And here's the truth that haunts every nuclear age. Most wars don't happen because someone wanted one. They happen because no one wanted to look weak. 4. The machine takes over. War at the speed of code. This is where it stops feeling human. American missile defense systems powered by AI pick up a signature that might be an incoming strike. Protocol says to wait, but the AI prioritizes speed. It doesn't flinch. It launches. Across the world, deepfake videos spread like wildfire. A fake Iranian surrender clip causes a U.S. patrol to let its guard down, leading to a real ambush. Russian bot networks flood social media with false alerts about nuclear launches in Europe. In Colorado, the U.S. Strategic Command receives a signal that appears to show multiple Iranian missiles in flight. But satellite data is glitching. The president has 7 minutes to decide retaliate or risk American soil. And here's the nightmare: the signal was corrupted, the missiles weren't real. But the decision had to be. When machines move faster than minds, the line between reality and simulation disappears. 5. Multiple fronts collapse. The war everyone feared becomes the war everyone is in. In just hours, the map changes. Syria explodes. Israeli jets clash with Russian air defenses. U.S. forces in Iraq are overrun. China positions amphibious units near Taiwan under the cover of exercises. Saudi Arabia's oil fields are hit with drones, throwing global supply into chaos. North Korea sees its moment and launches missiles into the Sea of Japan. India mobilizes troops near the Pakistan border as social media rumors of a nuclear incident spread. In Nairobi, shelves are empty. In Berlin, the internet goes down for 18 hours. In Houston, people fill bathtubs with water and try to remember where they put their radios. And in Tehran, Washington, Jerusalem, and Moscow, no one knows who's actually running the war anymore. Because the war has outrun its makers. At some point, a conflict stops being directed and just becomes a firestorm. One no longer asks who started it, only how bad will it get? Closing monologue. When momentum replaces strategy. This war wasn't declared, no treaty was signed, no enemy was named with clarity. And yet, here we are. Troops are dying in deserts they weren't deployed to. Markets are burning down systems that took decades to build. Children are hiding under desks for threats they can't pronounce. This wasn't World War III. Not officially. But maybe that's how the next World War happens, not with a mushroom cloud, but with 1,000 little missteps. Not with evil, but with momentum. Final question, engagement call. And now we ask